I suspect this is not the anime, but let's just open it up and make sure. Be real quick. Yeah. This is another pair of pants. And some white shirts. Cool. Then this. Well, not all of this is anime. This top one, though, is really important. So let's get it open and get it up. Spider-Man Into the Spiderverse. And I'm actually really looking forward to watching this. It seems fun. Also in the non-anime category, I got The Endless, which is sort of a... I guess a philosophical follow-up to maybe another movie of theirs, if not a thematic or actual sequel to another one. But it's supposedly kind of on the, for lack of better words, cheaper side, as in like it's not about spending a lot of money to do stuff. What am I even saying? But there's little things in it that just kind of play with your perspective and mess with your head, and I don't know. We'll see if it's actually good. I mean, some people think it's good. We'll just see if I also think it's good. So, I'm trying to think. Do I have this? The thing. Let's grab this thing. So first up we have The Power of Us, and let's dig down here for the Blu-ray version as well. And I guess the naming of this one is supposed to be kind of reminiscent of The Power of One. Maybe? On account of the fact that maybe it's Lugia related. Oh yeah, that might be a Lugia. Or Giant Skarmory. But I'm pretty sure Lugia. I can't see right now. But, you know, so I think that movie was The Power of One, and this is The Power of Us, so that's an interesting naming follow-up, but that might be unique to the US releases, so we'll have to see what the Japanese releases have in store for us. Let's get this crap off. Who even released this? My hair's getting in my mouth. No, I expect it to be the same underneath. Our dreams, our stories. Pokemon the movie, The Power of Us. You know what? It is really damn hard to keep track of the numbering now. Let's see. Anything notable about the back? I see a region A, English, and English audio. So yeah, once again, no Japanese with English subtitles. I think that's pretty expected. This is Viz, right? Yeah, I see a Viz right there. So let's take a look. It's in a whatever the hell that fucking thing was. That looks like a Lugia. That looks like a Lugia, and another Lugia, and a whatever the fuck that guy was. The mythical event only Pokemon from Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. Next up we have Hakumei and Mikochi. Complete collection. This looks cute and adorable. I guess before I look at the back, let me get this plastic off. Because I'm kind of curious. Region A. I think that's a 12. That's a really bad timing. Well, we see it's English dubbed, it's got audio. 3:25 minutes would be more consistent with 13. You know what? These things probably say what episodes are on them on here. Episodes 1 through 9. And one of these doesn't rotate as easily as the other. And then we've got episodes 10 through 12 plus OVA. Okay, so that would be a 13 episode thing. I don't know what it's about. I might plop that on soon. We got One Piece episode of Sabo. I think this one I've been told I should not watch yet. But let's see. Region A. English and Japanese, the fire burns on in their hearts. Oh, interesting. We have TV special, TV special. Let's get this lined up like this so I can see that this one is the Blu-ray and this one is the DVD. And we have an artwork. Next up we have Anime Caravan. Could be DamePri, 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 DamePri. Well, okay, yeah, taking a look at it, there's a bunch of Bishonen on it. I think that's another one, but I can't tell. Maybe y'all can tell looking at this through the camera. That's okay. Let's see. Multiple royalties, dueling loyalties, a harem in reverse, and a few wasted nights. So there should be a girl somewhere here. Is that a girl? Could be. I mean, this one could be a very masculine looking girl, I guess. Sorry, a very Bishonen looking girl. This one has Japanese with English subtitles only. Region A. 12 episodes on 2 discs. Oh, I've not been looking at the specials, have I? Look at bad news. I'm a little... something to, I guess, think about that now. Irae? What the hell am I even looking at now that I'm looking at it? I pre-ordered this and I don't even know what it is. We're gonna take the sticker off to see if there's any sexy elbows. What the hell am I even looking at? I think there was a little person back there. Maybe a sexy guy. I don't know. Well, we can look at the back. Ooh, regions A and B. English audio. Simple opening, or simple extras. Simple extras. This is a different cover. It's always cool. This one's kind of hard for me to process at the moment, though. Oh well. The complete series TV. Wait a second. This says this is region A only, and this says it's regions A and B. Different background. Different back. Okay, we're gonna take a closer look. What the fuck even is this? I'm confused. I need to put this aside. Let's see. So this is a Blu-ray only release. Funimation Blu-ray only. Okay. Funimation may be going more and more down that route. And let's see. There's a shit ton of stuff I see on printed on the disc in AB. And printed on this disc in AB and the Blu-ray 1 and Blu-ray 2. But at the end of the day, those are only printings, so if this series is not A and B, I don't know. What am I looking at back there? I wasn't even processing it. Maybe some sort of, I don't know. I thought it looked musical, but it doesn't look musical. Unless it's a really long violin string. Which doesn't seem likely. I think there's violins, just, you know, not violins. Here's this week's anime DVD collection update. Let's see. I watched Death March to the Parallel World Rhapsody. I keep calling it Death Parade. Death March. If there's multiple seasons of this, I only watched the one season that's here. It would be nice if there's more. My thoughts on it was actually pretty good. Not like the most spectacular isekais that I've seen per se, but actually surprisingly well done. Your main character... So, the series itself kind of knows it needs to have a pacing that's less giving you expectations of it being an action show. It has a couple of action moments, which I couldn't help but think that it would have been interesting if they weren't there. But they didn't have to not be there, if what I'm saying makes any sense. But for the most part, so this one just kind of advertised right off the bat that, okay, yes, the main character is overpowered. But the setup of that is kind of interesting. So in terms of world setup, it seems to be... I don't know, like, I was going to say reminiscent of Log Horizon, but maybe that's not quite accurate because the people in Log Horizon kind of were aware that they were in a game and were aware of the rules of it, but our main character is actually a guy who works on games, and when he wakes up there's some things similar to the game making stuff he was doing, has done, but lots of stuff he hasn't thought about, and for the most part he accidentally super levels himself. Which basically means he starts as a level 1 is a new person in an RPG, but he's kind of out in the middle of a field. And the exact details I'm not going to go into, but he ends up a ridiculously high level. And as he goes around, he interacts with the world as if he's a person really there, but also has access to game mechanics. So he's aware of menus and stuff. And he's overpowered, but it doesn't really set him up in a situation where he needs to be a Superman, I guess, per se. I mean, at least it doesn't do that a whole lot. There's maybe one or two places where it comes up, but otherwise it's sort of like he kind of acts like he's keeping all that stuff on the down low. And so he keeps unlocking skills by doing something. So, like, for example, if, he took a pair of scissors and he started cutting some paper in order to wrap a present, he'd probably get a gift wrapping skill or something like that. Or maybe a paper craft skill, something like that. And he has a shit ton of points with which to completely master stuff. So he basically is doing sort of everyday life-to-life stuff, playing a Superman staying in disguise sort of thing. And he's, of course I mentioned he actually does work making games, so that kind of tells you he's an older person, but for some reason in the game he looks like his younger self. Something that is not actually explored in this per se. Like, you're not going to end this series and say, okay, I understand everything that's going on here. You're going to probably end it and say, if you would think something like that, you'd probably be more likely to say, okay, I have a pretty good guess as to what all this anime secrets really are. But the truth of the matter is those usually don't matter as much because, they created him as a Superman, but they are doing other interesting things. And as a rough example, a dungeon gets generated kind of where he and a group of other people are. Not everybody's together, but he's together with people who are just like, kind of normal low-level people. And so for him, it's about, that situation is about kind of making sure they get out alive, and his way of doing that is to train them up on the skills. So this is actually maybe kind of similar to One Piece, how I've mentioned that the Straw Hat Pirates are kind of presented as just really spectacularly powerful when the going gets tough. Sometimes there's things happen and you kind of wonder, but then it's just like, no, they kick butt, they're awesome. And so there's moments of the show where the show is really about how them being powerful is really about being an inspirational force for other people. I mentioned that the very first episode of One Piece kind of solidifies this really well, because you can go back and watch it, and when you kind of know what's going to happen, and you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to ignore these little gag humor bits. I'm going to actually notice how Luffy inspires the main character, not the main character, he's kind of the protagonist of that episode. Kind of. I mean, he's the person through which we view that episode. But it's really an introduction to Luffy and, I don't know, stuff. So, it's about, this anime, you know, kind of has a really neat kind of feel for it like that. And it's definitely set up a thing where he has a harem of girls. But for some of these events, it kind of feels like he would have actually been a nice guy, even if the anime just hadn't put some girls on his lap, so to speak. So, it kind of feels fine, you know. It's like it doesn't seem unlikely per se, just, you know, he seems a little lucky that it happened, but for the most part his good attitude is what allowed those to kind of be a payoff in terms of him having characters that like him, and he just seems to generate a lot of characters liking him around him. And it's kind of interesting to compare this to My Life in Another World with My Cell Phone. I think it's maybe Starting My Life in Another World with My Cell Phone, because I described that one before as being a very, well, you know, he always goes places and makes things better, but that one's definitely about, oh yes, everybody just knows he's powerful, and you kind of can't help but wonder if people just sort of get orbiting around him because he's powerful, as opposed to this one, which is more like, because he's powerful, he's capable of doing things, but he keeps the power hidden, and because he's capable of doing things, people like him. It's an interesting trade-off. We're basically like, I don't think you can use cell phone as a very good indicator of whether or not you would like this one, because there's enough of that thematic difference in terms of, oh, the character's overpowered, and we know it. I'm pretty sure there's other isekais I can try and think of where the character's overpowered, but I don't know. You know, again, this doesn't really end everything. It doesn't even really stop in a super awesome place. This doesn't say complete collection on it, which makes me wonder if this is definitely a season 1 and maybe there's a season 2 out there. But no, it's not coming out. I'm not going to worry about that too much. Other than that, I did actually start Shantae Half Genie Hero. I wasn't intending to, but I was kind of not completely recovering from last week. So I went to visit my brother, and there was an important part of that because I had to get some documents out of storage that I need in order to do my license renewal. And you know, so that was a good excuse to actually go up there, and he had a different reason for me to do that, and I baked a lot of pumpkin pies for Pie Day. Technically I baked 4 on the Wednesday before, the day before, and then I baked 2 more on Saturday so I could bring 1 to my brother, and I guess the other one's just going to last this week for all my friends who didn't get any pie last week. So that would be like all of them. Granted, it's not going to be as good as fresh, but it's still going to be good. I'm going off. I'm definitely going off on a tangent. Anyways, I guess I decided to just fire up Half Genie Hero. So I haven't been as focused on it as I have on Pirate Curse, especially since Death March was a priority watch. What can I say about it so far? So far, it's interesting in that it feels like it's got a less this is the story kind of story going on. Excuse me. Instead, it feels like it's just a bunch of Shantae components that are there that, you know, just kind of neat. Some neat platforming and exploring. It's nice that transformations are back. I guess transformations were in 2. Why don't I remember 2 at all? I listened to some of 2's music. I'm like, this sounds like the same music as 3. So 4 having very different music is different, and it does some different platforming things that haven't been done in Shantae before, that have taken a little while to get used to for some of the things. And yeah, I've completed 2 worlds, so I'm not that far. I've just been grinding gems because I've been not really thinking about paying attention to too much stuff, because I want to understand some of the options, and I have to give up health healing if I want Sophia the Third. But that's an aside. I think I also remembered I watched Annihilation. What did I think of it? What did I think of it? It's hard to tell what my overall impression was. I remember kind of watching it and feeling like, I was kind of hoping it would have more of an otherworldly feel than it did. It definitely had a little bit of that, with the stuff near the end doing a really good job of being very surreal but meaningful in a coherent way. So maybe not that surreal, maybe surreal is the wrong word, but you kind of felt like you were definitely witnessing something that was higher dimensional, for lack of better words, more like such an alien concept. So there's been this idea that one of the good things about the data integration thought entity from The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya is it's a really good example of an alien that's so alien that we can't perceive it, because it does seem to have rules, but we can't perceive what those rules necessarily are. What you may think is a description of God, but the way people describe that is that God has rules, but you can't fathom the rules, which kind of means that they aren't rules. Whereas that doesn't really apply to the data integration thought entity. It's just kind of hard to conceptualize. It feels like it exists conceptually different than the way we perceive reality with baryonic matter, for example. And this one kind of touched into that pretty well in a visual way. As for the flow as it went, there were a lot of interesting things here and there it went. I didn't realize it was sci-fi horror. The horror element isn't too strong, but it is kind of, it's got a good presence. I wouldn't recommend this movie to people who like movies that just keep them on the edge of their seat with horror, but maybe if somebody was into horror that just kind of keeps them unnerved and every once in a while saying, oh, I guess I need to change my pants. Maybe. The problem is, I kind of remember some of these thoughts while watching it, but I don't know what they make me think in terms of the movie as a whole. But I did end up watching some YouTube videos where I heard other people's explanations for it, and they're interesting explanations. I think they probably are good and valid. They don't strike me as, oh geez, as realizing that one interpretation of Haibane Renmei is actually really hauntingly accurate and is probably what was originally intended, even if it didn't explain it that way. It probably didn't explain it that way because it wants you to... Well, I know the author wants you to be able to draw your own conclusions from it, and so in that regard it's actually pretty good, but it's also good that there is an explanation that I think can be pretty widely regarded as a decent interpretation of it. And I don't really want to say what any of this stuff is, because you may want to yourself. You may want to think about that stuff independently. You may want to be surprised by that. But knowing that some people can pull this from that is kind of good. If there's any reason I would say that, okay, I think my biggest problem with this is actually they present an idea that people within the Shimmer may not have a good perspective of time, but their way of representing it doesn't feel like it makes sense. And some of what it does feels like it fails to convincingly convey why, when the shimmer was smaller, people disappeared when they went into it. And maybe I just have a really bad interpretation of what that was when it was smaller, if that makes sense. Anyways, it's all a bunch of stuff. Clearly I am processing on borrowed power, for lack of coherent thoughts in terms of what I'm doing and saying. This has definitely been a very rough past week. Some of it being me pushing myself with the baking of pie, and definitely being tired in ACL traffic, and not ACL, South by Southwest, and all that stuff. But for the most part, Why is he saying that? That's something that y'all don't have to worry about. Instead, I should just end this video and start processing it and pick up dinner, even though I ate lunch 2 hours ago, 2.5 hours ago. So, y'all have a nice week.